ahead, and otherwise I'll end up repeating stuff anyway. Welcome, everyone. I'm really excited to be hosting Columbia Fiction Foundry's first roundtable discussion on the topic structuring your novel. The response has been fantastic, so thank you for joining us. And I just learned that Seoul, in fact, I was going to say thank you for coming out on such a beautiful day in New York, but clearly we have people from far afield. Seoul is in Peru. And I know Charles, you are, where is Charles? The icons have moved. There's Charles. Charles, where are you from? Where are you dialing in from?
I'm in Miami right now.
Miami. Okay. And actually, just in terms of people here, how many people are not from New York? Can you raise your hands? Wow, that's awesome. So this is so interesting, and I think it's nice for Jenna to see this. The silver lining of having to go remote is that we really have been able to reach and communicate with and share with with people from all over. And that's really exciting. So thank you everyone who has joined us today. First, I would like to thank Jenna Farley-Fleming, Senior Associate Director of Diversity and Engagement at the Office of Alumni and Development. I'm not exaggerating when I say this event would not have happened without Jenna. She handled everything from publicity to RSVPs to tech issues to much more. So Jenna, can you just say hello and let us give you a round?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much, Tanya. That was a very generous introduction. As Tanya said, this is really exciting. We've not done something like this before. And, COVID has done a lot of really not so good things for us, but it's definitely made our community a little bit tighter and made us able to interact with people that we never would have gotten to work with it before. So it's so exciting to see all of you. I'll put my email in the chat box just in case anybody has any questions or want to reach out. As Tanya said, I oversee all of diversity engagement with the CAA, the Columbia Alumni Association, which means, everything from managing our shared interest groups, which of course Fiction Foundry is one, to working with our student alumni programming and our alumni leadership group, and also, kind of everything in between. So I'm happy to answer any questions anyone might have. I'll put, again, my email will be in the chat, and please don't be shy. And I look forward to hearing your discussion tonight.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jenna. So it looks like everyone has muted themselves, which is awesome. Thank you. That just prevents us from having feedback. So if you'd like to share, just click the raised hand icon, which where is that? Let's see. I don't even see it on my screen. Can someone tell me where they see it on their screen? So we'll make sure we all are up and running.
It's on the reactions icon at the bottom to the right.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Who was that? Lynn. Excellent. So you click the reactions icon and then you do the hand, the hands clapping or whatever. Raise hand. There's a raise hand. Okay, great. So I know how that works as well. And so I see a thumbs up. Okay, awesome. We're all getting tech savvy with this. That's good. And so while you guys are talking, I will try to navigate the screen and give as many people a chance to share as possible. You can also put questions in the chat. I'll try to monitor that. And if you have specific resources, such as a book that helped you, please feel free to put that in the chat as well. I'll save the information and compile it to send out after the event to everyone who signed up. We are also recording the discussion, so we'll put a link to that on our website shortly after the event as well. I think that's it. We are going to start with a little presentation from one of our Columbia Fiction Foundry's executive committee members, Margie Winslow. And don't be intimidated because Margie actually prepared something, so that's okay if no one else did. This really is, a conversation. We're just going to see how that goes. Margie, I'm going to turn the floor to you. I just wonder, let me just see something here. Okay, you can put the speaker view. Oh no, but I can't do that. All right, but you guys can put the speaker view if you want to see Margie a little bit larger. Okay.
Close enough. Thank you, Tanya, for hosting this and arranging it for us in this time of dispersal and not seeing each other in person for a long time. The topic of story plotting has been sort of a little bit of an obsession with me for a long time. When I first started writing memoirs, first of all, I have 3 published memoirs. And then with fiction writing, I found there were certain books that I really just loved and found very satisfying structurally, if you want to call it that. And others, I really appreciated them and remembered the characters, but sometimes they bogged down the middle, or the ending was rushed, or they just seemed to fizzle away or go off on tangents. So being a scientific background, I started looking at things. And I think most of us who've taken any courses in creative writing know that, you know, one of the people who influenced the way we think about story is Aristotle. And using the plays of Sophocles, he talked about the beginning, the middle, and the end, like, okay. And then many other traditions have come along that have variations on a similar theme. And so one of the fun things to do, especially if you like to be much more creative than I am, is look at some of the story structures from around the world. There are a number of articles in Wikipedia on this, where people have a totally different way of telling stories. And the thing is that we Western people tend to have certain expectations. And so, like, if someone tells a joke, we don't want the punchline in the middle. And so we have certain expectations that are perhaps, you know, Western European, et cetera. So anyway, the one that, I'm going to show this to you. Does this show up right side out? Yeah, Freytag's pyramid. Okay, it looks like a sawtooth. An asymmetric pyramid. And what it has is at the beginning, exposition, you know, the setting, the status quo. Then there's the first conflict, rising action, climax at the top. And I was going to show you PowerPoint, so this is not very good, but falling action, and then the resolution. And one of the things that I enjoyed about this is it resonated with me in terms of proportion, like how long one should spend on setting up the story before something happens. And this is just very personal to my preferences. And about when in the book the climax should occur. And I'll be very happy to send these because the PowerPoints are in color and a lot better to read than this, okay? One of the things I just want to talk about in the next slide is the rising action, which can refer to external events like a car chase or a murder, but it also includes conflict, external and internal, societal, situational, new complications, new challenges, setback and reaction, new obstacles. So rising action doesn't necessarily mean an action, physical action, external action. Also, just one other thing I'll show you, just to stay in time here, that there should also be breaks. So I often see this represented, and I'll send it to you, as having a sawtooth. So there are times when you can't have relentless tension increasing or relentless conflicts, unless it's a thriller of a particular genre. You want to have things that are moments where somebody is having a cup of tea or visiting the bar or even just taking a shower, where you have a chance to exhale. Okay, and then the last thing I'll say is that before I recommend a book, is that subplots, according to certain people, should have their own narrative arc. So if you pull them out, and in my revision on my novel, and I don't know if this is a good idea or not, but I did it, pull out the subplots and see how, if they have a narrative arc, if there's character development, et cetera, for each of the subplots. Okay, and so last but not, so I have a list of types of subplots. Again, I'll send that to you. And there's one book I really highly recommend. This book by Victoria Schmidt, Story Structure Architect. She has 5 dramatic through lines, 6 conflicts, 11 master structures, 21 genres, and 55 dramatic situations. And it shows the narrative arcs for each of them. You know, you probably can't see this, but anyway, here's one of them. And so if you are of a bent to want to analyze things, or you're wondering why your novel is sort of stuck or something, then these can be helpful to you. Okay, I'll stop there.
Wow, Margie, that was awesome. If anyone wants a one-on-one with Margie, put your email out there, because that's a lot of information. That's great, great. I mean, obviously, Margie has put a lot of thought and care into this, which is fantastic. So I have, you know, resources I can share, but I think maybe maybe it would be a good time to kind of let people respond to that with any particular challenges they have or questions. Is there anyone who has a question or a struggle with their own work? Yeah, Lisa.
If I could kind of follow up with it. Yeah, I'm really glad that Margie started with narrative arc, because that is definitely, it doesn't matter whether you're writing a short story or you're writing a novel, that's sort of the gist. So in other words, you have a dilemma or something that a character wants, and then the action builds up, and then there's a crisis point where they have to make a decision, and then at the end there's, you know, a follow-up and a resolution, which doesn't have to be firm. But that is true of whether you write a short story or whether you write a novel. The thing about a novel, the way that I was taught, is that you can have sub-narrative arcs. So in other words, you have an overriding narrative arc, and then you have other things that happen, you know, over the course of the novel, get resolved at different times. And I just want to say just two things. The first thing is that writing a novel is like walking into a dark room and it's chaotic, and you have no idea what you're going to bang your head up against. And the second thing is that it's good, you know, in other words, like the bricklaying, that just forget about what you think about what you're doing, because you get to do that later, but just try to keep the narrative going. Just go forward. And if you can't go forward, then just go back a couple of steps and see how you can get yourself to go forward. And a first draft is just a first draft. So there is a book, and I'm going to send it to Tanya, but it's kind of a book that someone actually recently published. But I found that this is what I kind of figured out for myself, which is that you write the first draft and then you print it out. And it may take you a year, it may take you longer. You print it out and then you write the novel again. And because you know where you're going to go, and you know how to fix the things that maybe you didn't feel like were working. And then once you have that second draft, then revise it. It's very hard to take, in the midst of all the chaos, the writing, and then to try to change it, because you're going to have better ideas because you know your target. And that's really all I want to say. I know I also sometimes will, if I feel inspired, like I kind of know where things are going and I want to go a little bit ahead, or I want to write an ending, at least maybe I'm probably going to change it. You know, that's also can be very helpful. And that's all I need to say.
That's so helpful. Thank you, Lisa. And Lisa, by the way, runs our Wednesday workshops. So she's a wonderful workshop leader. So I invite you guys to participate in some of those Wednesday workshops. Well, I would like to weigh in, but I want to let me just go to my second screen here and see if there's anyone else with a hand raised. No. So just again, feel free, guys, raise their hands. I'm sure you have questions and challenges. Anyone who's tried to pick up a pen or written anything has those. So I will say from my experience, I've written a number of agented but unpublished novels, and I came to the structure game late, at my peril. So this is, you know, all right. So as a disclaimer here, I think what you're going to find, it's sort of nice to hear different perspectives, because there are no rules to this. You know, everyone has a different approach. Different things work for different people. Different books resonate. There's sort of the people talk about plotters or pantsters. And if you're on the writing community of Twitter, there's a lot of dialogue around this question. And a plotter is someone who plots, and a pantster is someone who flies by the seat of their pants. And you know, that absolutely can work. In my experience, it did not work, because I would end up with a rather unwieldy, massive amount of pages that was really hard to kind of retrofit. So for this book, I decided I have to get a handle on structure. And one of the books I read, again, I will send all this out to you. This one is, you know, it's well known. It is The Writer's Journey, Mythic Structure for Writers by Christopher Vogler. A lot of the good structure books, interestingly, are written for screenplay. Another one that people adore, which you've probably heard about, is Save the Cat by Blake Snyder. It was originally also for screenplay writing. And maybe that's because screenplays they have extremely strict rules about exactly how many pages and, you know, the 3-act structure. And novels could maybe benefit from a little bit more of that. This is a huge book, and it's a little bit unwieldy, and it's really fascinating. And it follows, to Margie's point, a lot of story structure is inbred in us, certainly in the Western culture, and maybe other cultures have a different structure. In fact, I'm sure they do, but I'm speaking from, you know, the Western perspective. And, you know, like, it comes from myth, it comes from, you know, from antiquity, and we kind of look for that intuitively when we read. So reading that book was incredibly helpful, but it was very hard for me to translate that into, okay, great. Now how do I actually write this damn thing, right? And for that, his name is Michael Huig. It's 6-stage plot structure. It is, you know, I have this little printout, and I copied something from the internet. This is how big it is. It's just a few pages. But what I love about this is it actually tells me Act 1, Stage 1, 10% of your novel. At 25%, you need to have turning point number 1. At 50%, you need turning point number 3, point of no return. At 75%, you need major setback. I really like having those benchmarks. And this is the first book where I literally said, after this many words, I need this turning point. After X number of words, I need that turning point. And it's helped me immensely, although it's very challenging because it requires a degree of discipline. Anyway, I could say more about that, but I think I saw a hand raised. Wasn't it you, Michael?
Just yes, I needed to pause to unmute myself. Yeah, so I just wanted to say that Save the Cat actually has a sequel called Save the Cat Writes a Novel. And I've been looking at that quite closely and was very skeptical at the beginning, but I have to say that it has been very helpful. It's written by a young woman who has published a couple of things for adults, more things for young adults. And she's got very creative ideas on her own, and also has a deep understanding of Blake Snyder's original Save the Cat. So I would add that I would diffidently recommend that to an addition to your list. Save the Cat Writes a Novel.
Fantastic. Thank you, Michael. And by the way, when I looked up Save the Cat, there is a whole cottage industry around this book.
Yes, indeed.
Courses and this. So, you know, but I'm curious, Michael, you said you were hesitant, and why is that? What was your hesitation in going to something that's so formulaic? Because in a way, you know, everyone here has some Columbia affiliation, and not to, you know, I have my MFA from Columbia and my BA from Yale, and I feel like it took me a lot of years to kind of unlearn some of that and get a little bit more workmanlike about my writing and a little bit less precious about it. So, I mean, that's just, you know, again, everyone's perspective is very different. What was your hesitation, Michael?
My hesitation, I think, just I'm not sure I can reconstruct what my hesitation was, because I've kind of become very enthusiastic about that book and about her thinking. I do want to also supplement what you said about the cottage industry around Save the Cat. It includes some Udemy courses by Jessica Brody, who's the same person who wrote Save the Cat Writes a Novel. And I haven't looked at her videos, her courses yet, but as I say, the book is something that I can recommend with confidence. So I would guess that her video course is probably pretty good too, at least.
All right, cool. Thank you, Michael.
Can I just make an ellipse? When I did my MFA, I actually last year I worked with a screenwriter and a playwright, and I read Save the Cats and analyzed movies for structure, and I was writing a novel. So I just want to put that in there.
Yes, that's fantastic. And Margie, you wanted to say something, and then I have a question. Someone had a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, very, very quickly. I was thinking there's so many good recommendations here. Would you mind if we sent them all to you to disperse by email? Would you?
I plan to do that. The best thing to do is to put them in the chat, because the chat will be saved, and then I'll have them in one place. So you can do it right when you're thinking of it. It'll all be there, and I will compile it and send it out to everyone everyone who RSVP, because we do have people who actually couldn't be here, and I'll include them as well. But the question was from Kira Ann. Thanks so much, Kira, for asking this. It's a great question. This is what she wrote. I've heard of character-driven and plot-driven books. Is that a false dichotomy when thinking about structure? I know that plot and character play important roles in structure, but I don't want to overthink which one takes the lead. I'm going to answer that, and then I'll pass it out, because I'm sure a lot of people have thoughts on that. I love that question, because I tend to be a character-driven writer, and the answer is they're both important. One of the things, again, I'm not getting a cut from this dude, but one of the things I like about this is that he has the inner journey and he has the outer journey. And what is really clear about this is both matter. Your inner journey has to track the outer journey. So the outer journey is the plot, the actions. That's your structure of stuff that happens externally, and your inner arc is just as important. So it's not one or the other. If you're writing genre fiction, again, a lot of this depends on what genre you're writing. A really plot-driven novel is going to have very scant character development. But if you're writing something that's more like upmarket literary, then the character arc is just as important. But do you mind if I ask here, Anne, what is it what kind of writing are you trying to do, or thinking of doing, or are doing?
Thank you so much for asking, Tanya. So most of my work has been in, well, granted, I'm relatively new to the game, so I'm hoping to develop a more in-depth repertoire in dystopian and speculative works. My first novel is a work of speculative dystopian fiction inspired by oral history. And so... Wait,
slow down. That was so cool what you just said. It was dystopian inspired by what?
Oral history.
Oh, how fascinating. Okay.
Yeah, so for my first book, I was able to look to oral history to inform my structure. But I guess now I'm currently working on my second novel that doesn't use that same framing. And I guess I'm trying to figure out, so my first book was a lot more plot driven due to the nature of it being dystopian and being based on oral history, because oral history stories tend to be more plot driven in relation to characters. But now for my second book, it's definitely more character driven, and it's in the mindset of a 19-year-old girl. And I'm just like, whoo, I feel like I'm so caught up in her interiority that I'm worried that I'm undermining the ability for the story to go forward. Or is the interiority better because her character matters more in the context of this story than it would in a more dystopian, action-oriented tale? So I guess that's what kind of where I'm running into the overthinking aspect.
Yeah, and that also, by the way, is where having sort of a little bit of a chart, so for example, if you were to, and again, I'm just using, this is what I use, but other people can use something else. So like for this, for example, they talk about what has to happen at, you have an inciting incident, a call to action, there have to be stakes, it's obstacles. And so if you block the events, roughly, you can do it roughly, or you can do it minutely, as I did with dozens of little Post-its. And if you sort of block where your character needs to get to from an action point of view at a certain number of words, and you also block to where they need to get to, so you have benchmarks internally and externally. And then you can kind of have a sense of like, am I lagging too much? Am I dwelling too much? And the only other thing I will say on that is, if that's happening, that is not a problem, because all of that work, sort of wandering around work that we do as writers, it may not make it into your final draft, but that's how you get to know them and you get to know their motivations. So it's, it's a little bit of a juggle, which sort of Lisa was saying, in terms of, you want to give yourself freedom to explore, but then ultimately get it into a structure. Does that help at all?
Oh, that's very helpful. Yeah.
All right.
Help reining it in, basically.
Right, but you can't necessarily rein it in before you rein it out, right? Exactly. So I see a hand raised. Parul?
Yeah, hi, Tanya. I was wondering, you've made reference a few times to this interesting document or book or whatever it is that you have about percentages. And I love things that are like very quantifiable like that. It's just gives you something concrete to aim for. So what exactly is it that you're referring to?
Yeah, and I will, again, this will all be sent out to you at the end, so don't worry too much. It happens to be, it's Michael Hauge, Hauge, 6-stage plot structure. And, this was something I just printed out from the internet, and I read a lot about it. I heard a lot about it, and I just find it super helpful. So, but I'll put that you'll get that afterwards. I'll be sure to put that in there. Okay. And yes, it is helpful to be able to bring our, our quant brain to bear on the structure.
I like that. I like to even when I'm writing to have a numerical goal. People say just 2 hours or whatever, but I'm finding that just somehow easier if I have a numerical goal for something. So.
Yeah, and that's another topic, which maybe we could have another conversation on, which is just how do you track your writing, writing process. I love that question, okay. But I'll try to rein it in.
Thanks.
Does anyone else want to answer? We have something from Mariana.
Hi there. This is my first time in this, but yes, about character-driven versus plot-driven. I know what it's like to be wandering around in writing about the character, and had to learn that, what is character? Character is the choices people make. It's the things people do. And that, I forget who said it, but that dialogue is something people do to each other. And so even if it feels like it's just about character, these are actually points of conflict and action that you can chart, and a part of your structure that you're aiming for, that there's some kind of turn that's based on what they're thinking and what they're saying.
Oh, I love that. That was so well said, Marianne. I love what you said about dialogue is actually something characters do to each other.
Yeah, I forget who said that, but it's helpful, because otherwise it was like chatty. I'm like, no, they're actually in conflict, and they're trying to affect change, and they're trying to get something. And
yeah, I mean, really, the everything, every dialogue, it should fulfill more than one function, right? It should be either bringing character development, advancing the plot. The other thing that can be very helpful is I don't know what genres you guys all write and read. And I just have to say, Kira, and this is actually kind of important. Hi there. Since you are writing dystopian, or maybe you're not this time around, but it is do you read? It's really important to read in your genre, because there are particular criteria that are different from one to the next. Like romance has certain rules, if you're writing real genre stuff. But March just shared a file. Okay. But that's the other thing that is very helpful, is just reading. And I write upmarket literary stuff, which is more character driven, but I love to read domestic suspense, for example, because, and actually maybe I'm going to just get this book. Hold on a second. I read Vera Hendricks books whenever they come out. We have interviews with her on our website. She's lovely, and she's a best-selling author, and we've interviewed her a couple times. And this, she's a book a year author with her partner, right? Which is definitely not me. And it tends to be, you know, so it's very plot driven. And it's fascinating to read that because you really see, how does she create suspense? How does, you know, there's no scene that doesn't have something happening and something with stakes. And that's the other thing in terms of structure, is like everything has the stakes, you know. So to your point too, Kira Ann, you know, the stakes could be, if I walk under that building, the bricks could fall on my head, right? That's very external. Or the stakes could be, I don't know, someone help me out. There can be real emotional stakes that are, but where something very important, you know, is at risk. So the character should never just be wandering down the street. Does anyone else? Yeah, Ken. Hi, Ken. Unmute, Ken. I know Ken, so I can say it like that. He comes to our workshops. So
yeah, which are helpful. So just a reaction. So I guess where I'm at is I have 2 unpublished novels and I'm working on a 3rd. So can't say I'm an expert on plotting, but what I found are the my test is, am I enjoying this? Am I having a good time today? And I feel like when it's working, when I feel like this is fine, then I feel reassured that whatever I'm doing is probably moving the story forward. I start with a general sense, but for me, I would feel that I need later on to look at the structure, all the things that we've talked about so far. But for me, I think it would be more inhibiting for me to start with the structure. I know where I sort of want to go. I know sort of the characters that I would like to develop and where I think there might be some interaction points. But if I get too detailed, I feel like it would take the pleasure away, because I'd rather just sort of let it go, which may be sort of the long road, because then you have to sort of reinstall retroactively some of the more specific timing and plot points. But as a process, so far, that's the most rewarding for me.
Okay, I mean, that's really interesting. Okay, Mariana Cherry, bye-bye, thank you. So that's a great perspective, Ken. And what about, so let's just, you know, is everyone here writing a novel or wants to write a novel? I mean, I kind of assume so. Can we just, I have 2 screens, but let's just like, who is everyone, can you raise your hand if you're writing? Someone, that's a lot of hands. That's like everyone, okay? Or most people. So let's turn this over now to a problem you're having, right? Like something that's a challenge that you think that is, actually, Michael, I see you down there. Hi there, Michael. And I know that Michael is Michael Hirsch, this is, who has the great wallpaper behind him. And Michael also comes to our workshop. So I know Michael is a fantastic journalist, and you have raised questions about, translating nonfiction to fiction. And within the parameter, there's a lot of things that come under that umbrella. But within the just under the topic of structure, is that something that you feel with your nonfiction work, you actually, it helps you in writing fiction or not? What is your perspective on that?
I'm sorry, what helps?
Being a nonfiction writer, being a journalist, does that help you? And just in terms of the structural part of, because that's the topic for today, we can talk about other things another time.
Yeah, I mean, I worked for Newsweek magazine for most of my career. Newsweek in its heyday, not the way it is now, but and we, everything was about narrative. The story didn't have a great narrative, then it wasn't going to work. And so I've been doing that for most of my career. And my second nonfiction book, which was about all the events leading up to the big financial crisis, was a fast-paced narrative, but one that was also loaded with characters. And it was a great deal of fun to write for that reason. But at the same time, I mean, my question about going from nonfiction to fiction, is really about I mean, nonfiction is easy because the facts are all out there. Like in the case of that book, I was actually stunned by the way that Alan Greenspan and Robert Rubin, the former Treasury Secretary, completely lost their reputations. It's always wonderful for dramatic purposes to see how your former heroes have played feet, and that's what drove me to write the book. But it was all laid out because all the facts were there and their life histories were there. Whereas, with a novel, you're completely out in the blue, and you don't know what the balance between plot and character should be because you're making it all up as you go along. And so I don't know if that is a response to your question. I would just say that what I'm doing now in writing a novel is vastly more difficult than anything I've ever done as a nonfiction writer, as a journalist.
Interesting. Well, that's an interesting perspective, because I would think that you have to be so tightly structured with nonfiction, especially if you're writing for a publication like that it would give you some sense. I know that for me, I found writing, even though people say writing short stories and novels are very, very different, which they are, but given that my tendency is more towards being a novelist, I found writing short stories extraordinarily helpful, because one of structure is my hardest thing for me. And with a novel, it's just, you can't see it. Like you can't, with a house, you can, move things around, you can actually see it. And with a short story, it brought it down to a more manageable size where I could see the arc, I could see the shape of it a lot better. And that helped me with writing novels a lot. So Margie had something in the chat where she said she has trouble with pacing. Is that something, I guess that's sort of very related, right?
Yeah, and in fact, one of the reasons why I play around with structures and proportions is, is it bogging down over unimportant things and I'm racing through critical things. And it's very hard to see. I can see it in other people's novels, and I, I would know how to fix theirs, but it's very hard to see in your own, because every time I think something is sort of sluggish, I'll sort of fall in love with either the setting or the atmosphere or the character's inner thoughts, and I'll just go on and on and on. And so it's really hard to be able to try to look at it from a reader's point of view. Are they going to get bored with this? Have we lost sight of the stakes here or whatever? It's hard to look at it from the reader's point of view. Those are great points, Margie. And I mean, again, it's wonderful to go and off and spend time with your characters and explore settings and go down those wormholes of research on the internet. That is another word for procrastination. But there does come a time, right, when you want to get it shipshape. And getting feedback, I would say, is also incredibly important, because very, very few people, I don't think there's a writer alive or anywhere. I mean, I don't want to make that gross of a generalization, but most writers need a reader, and I think if you are in a workshop and you get feedback, your readers will very quickly say, this lagged, this was, this would digress far too much. So Rebecca, and I'm going to go backwards on, so we have some good questions here. Rebecca, Linda Ellison has the question, how do you find readers? Well, that's why we have Columbia Fiction Foundry, because we have the workshops. And actually, that's one of the essential things about these workshops. And ours are free. I'm not actually, promoting it, because, we have tons of people. But finding a workshop, or you could start your own writing group. But that's the best way. Some people have someone in their family, but having other readers read your stuff having other writers read your stuff, can be super helpful. And we have here from Michaela Connors. Oh, and just going to jump because this is very relevant. How do we sign up for the workshop? So Sol, are you on our, are you on our email list? I don't know, Sol?
No, I don't think so. I just saw this like in the monthly.
Oh, okay. Okay,
yeah.
Great. So you know what? I will send out, actually, good. Jenna put it up. Awesome. Thank you, Jenna. Columbia Fiction Foundry alumni. She put the link, and we have all kinds of buttons on there saying sign up, sign up, sign up. that will come to me, to my email, and I will send you a welcome, and I'll put you on our email list. And then when the call for submissions goes out, which is either we have a monthly Wednesday workshop and we have a monthly Saturday morning workshop, and you can see if you're in Peru, the timing, you see how the time, what works for you. But yeah, everyone here, if you're not on our email list, we welcome you to follow that link that Jenna put up, and I'll also include it when I send out our recap.
Yeah, there's also a Wednesday workshop on the 18th in May. So if anybody just wants to see what it's about, we can see if you'd want to just join it, and then you could just see, or the next Saturday. We always have people doing that, so it's our pleasure.
Great. Thank you so much, Lisa. That's absolutely true. So, okay, so then we're going backwards here. I'm juggling, this is for Michaela Connors. Oh, wow. Wow, this is a doozy, Michaela. I'm juggling 4 different perspectives. So full cast of characters, and have struggled with making sure each has a fulfilling arc. Well, you know what? Guess what? Yep, where's Michaela? Oh, there you are. Hi, Michaela.
Hi.
So yes, that sounds challenging, Michaela. Well, have you blocked out the arc for each of your characters and sort of done character sketches for each one?
Yeah, so I'd say that there's one main protagonist who the writer's journey also really helped me, because her story, I'd say, is the main kind of external plot arc. So she's the through line through the story. But I have done some blocking out of it, but I end up meandering sometimes and deviating from that. And just one of the reasons why I have 4 perspectives is I love just doing like a character study and going into the different characters. I love movies or stories that have huge casts of characters, like The Big Short or like heist movies or whatever. So, but yes, I probably need to do a bit more plotting, but it can be difficult. And I've had some feedback of, oh, well, why don't you collapse 2 of the characters into one? And I am resistant to that. But we'll see if I end up doing that. I'm trying not to.
Okay, well, that's actually thank you for elaborating a little bit. These are very, very relatable questions for anyone who's ever picked up a pen. And it's a little bit linked to a comment from Kira Ann, which is, I'm struggling with accessibility, voice believability. Now, accessibility, I'm going to put as a separate thing, but this question of voice, and this is very related to your question, Michaela, voice is incredibly important. And especially if you're having multiple points of view, characters written from different points of view, they do have to be very distinct and very believable. And really, I like to say that as a writer, we all have to be, multiple personalities, because we actually are all of our characters. We have to live and embody, all of our characters, which is why I always wonder why it's so much easier for me to write the villains. But, so I think the thing with that, if someone is saying to you, why don't you collapse these 2 characters? One question you might ask yourself is, are they interchangeable? And if you're inclined not to combine them, not to collapse them into one, then maybe there's some work to be done to ask yourself and do that brainstorming work and that sort of exploratory writing work of what is so distinct and what is different about their journeys. But this is all the discovery. I mean, this is writing is not a straight line. So. But in terms of your 4 characters, you can totally do that. And you mentioned the things you like that have that. And I think that's a really, that's always a great source. Also is we're drawn to things that we like, and we want to try it in that vein, and look to those things you like and see how they do it. Let me just go onto my second page here. I don't see any hands raised. So it sounds like all of you guys have no issues. I'm so impressed. Oh, here we go. Here's a good one from Victoria. I'm struggling with flashbacks. Sorry, I'm getting different things. Okay, sorry. I'm struggling with flashbacks between different periods of time in the protagonist's life. That's a challenge too. Mine actually, my current work in progress has 2 timelines. So Victoria, where are you? There you are. Okay, yeah. So to explain a little bit, what is the challenge that you're finding?
So many challenges. Basically, sometimes there's a flashback within a flashback, and those who are in my Wednesday critique, Jack, Lisa, and Michael, who are here today, have been helping me out. But there are times where the feedback I've gotten is I've gotten too far into a flashback, that I've left the sort of the previous installment hanging still, and they're waiting for the resolution to come back to that. If that makes sense.
It makes so much sense. And the only thing I'm going to say about that, and actually I would let Lisa, because she's in on Wednesday, but you know, one of the challenges about our monthly workshops is, especially for novel, for novel critiquing, is you're reading a chapter every month, and most people, maybe you miss a month and you miss a chapter, and that is not how we read. So as a writer, this is also where it's a little bit challenging. You want to be open-minded and take in the critiques of your fellow readers and writers, but you also have to be true to your story and know, so in terms of that particular question, Victoria, I certainly obviously can't answer that. And it might, that's, you can do, I think one of the things with a flashback, if it's that long, maybe it's a separate chapter. Are you doing your past present thing just with flashbacks, or is it an actual separate timeline?
Sorry, could you repeat that again?
So are you doing, you have past things happening, but is that like a separate arc where you actually have a present chapter and a past chapter, a present chapter, a past chapter? How are you structuring it?
Okay, so it starts off with the protagonist in college, flashback to high school, a flashback within that, back to college.
But this is all within one chapter, or are they broken up by chapters?
Oh, sorry, no, it's throughout the course of several chapters. Yeah.
So the reason I ask that is, and again, there are no rules, and please, Lisa, jump in here, and Margie, jump in, anyone, who has experience with this, but there are some things you can do to help your reader. One would be if you're going to have, obviously, we're not talking point of view today. I'm not even going to go there. Charles, I'm looking at you. Charles and I have had conversations about point of view, but if you have a very long flashback, maybe it belongs in a separate chapter. That can help the reader, right? So, because you do want to have signposts and and indicators for the reader, like the reader's going down this path, right? So if they're going to walk into a beautiful field, it's nice if the field is big enough that they can explore, but it's small enough that they can see the parameters and know they can get out of it. But if you're going to walk into a whole separate, something where you're really going deeper and deeper, then maybe it is a separate chapter. Those are options. Flashbacks within flashbacks do get challenging, and you can, you do have to keep the sense of this, this scaffolding of your overarching plot line arc, and everything does have to kind of toggle onto that, so we don't feel like we're getting lost. But again, that may be something that happens in the revision. I don't know.
Yeah, I actually don't have a problem with the flow and going from different time periods. And I think it's about when you finish the whole thing, that the first chapter teaches a reader how to read the novel, and that is an opportunity. I mean, I agree with what Tanya's saying about splitting the time periods, putting them in different chapters, and you could see if that's enough, or you could have some dating, something that designates so that the reader knows where they are. But looking at the first chapter, and like the first chapter is the most rewritten chapter of any novel. But in other words, you get to sort out, once you're done, you get to sort out like what do you, you don't have to really think about it, but that's the first chapter is where you set the writer up to understand how the novel is written. So there's a lot of things you can do, and structurally, meaning just how the pages are arranged, that the reader knows where they are. And there are a lot of novels that jump around time periods, and they will have, like a separate page, or they'll just orient the reader in the chapter title with, where you are in the course of the story. So there's a lot of things you could do. I wouldn't worry about it now.
Well, if I could jump in, I'm not against flashbacks myself. Some of my readers have had stronger opinions against that. And, certainly you really shouldn't have flashbacks too soon. You really want to get the momentum going. If you're going to do flashbacks, I think you first want to get, everything moving, and then certainly a flashback's okay. But I will also bring up what the guys from Folio said a couple of years ago. He was really against flashbacks.
Let me just to fill people in. We had an event with Folio, a literary agency, and several agents came and critiqued people's pages. So that's what Jean is referring to. Go ahead, Jean.
Right, and I just remember how strongly he said no flashback. Now I don't agree with that, but I do think you have to be judicious. I've had people reading, and I've had a lot of flashbacks in earlier, iterations of my novel. And I've reduced them. I haven't eliminated them. So I guess I just say just flashbacks with care. And definitely I agree, not too early in the book, because you really want to get the stuff moving and you don't want to break it up and have people just,
I just want to say something in Victoria's defense, though. The flashbacks are very, very important. They're part of the story and they're part of the movement of the story. So it's different in terms of what we traditionally think. So I just want to put that in there.
Yeah, and I think what this really illustrates is, we're talking about this in the abstract. None of us have read the book, and the fact is, the only real criteria is that it works.
Yeah.
And I think we can all think of incredible, wonderful, experimental, brilliant books that break every rule, but they work. So, that's.
I'm actually talking more from a marketing standpoint, because Folio was so strongly against it. So it just, I frankly have some disagreements with the way many people think about literature in general today. But, the truth is, you have to live with it. Like I said, I am not personally not at all against flashbacks, but I've certainly seen a lot of pushback.
Right. Okay. So, and Margie, you wanted to say something on that?
Oh, yes. I posted my very messy storyboard, much used and much abused, that I've moved things around. But one thing from a book by Mary Carroll Moore, which I'll post down below, she was talking about a couple of things about flashbacks. And she said, if you separate the two out, it could be that the flashback is the story that you want to tell. If you have so much of the novel is in this other timeline, then that may be the story, or you may have two books. And I've been struggling with that. When I realized I had about 15% flashbacks of one character, I realized that I was dealing with two timelines. And so I have the wartime timeline and I have the present day timeline. And which is right now extremely popular with historical fiction and some mysteries. So where you make it clear with time slots, Attu Island, 1942, etc., and make it clear when you're bouncing back and forth, because and they are chapter length flashbacks.
See, I think that's different. If it's multiple timelines, that's not a flashback. You've got the story here and the story there.
Right. Well, I think Margie's point is that this is part of the question, right? The part of the question is to look at your structure. Right. So let's, all right, well, that's enough on I think we've discussed enough on this particular piece that none of us have read, and everyone weighs in. And what's interesting,
except a few of us that are here on Wednesday.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
So, I think, again, what this illustrates, and you see how quickly people have strong opinions about writing and about, what they like and what works and what doesn't. And so, what do you take from that as a writer? Like when you listen to that and even if it's not about your book, how do you integrate feedback when people do feel very strongly and maybe you get contradictory feedback? Any thoughts on that? Yeah, Ken. Can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, Tanya, as you said, that's a function of attending the workshops, the way we've structured them. And so over time, I think what I've recognized is that there are, I can tell where people are coming from. And I'm better able over time. I think it's hard to do it in one workshop, but if you're in a series of workshops with the same people, I think over time I've gotten a sense of who is in closer affinity with what I'm trying to write, sort of who gets what I get. I could be completely wrong, but at least we're on the same page. And so I pay closer attention to those, which doesn't mean I dismiss the other ones, because often, even though it may not be a comment that's central to what I'm trying to write, it's something that I've missed, or it's an improvement that I can make. So I think, so that's what I've learned, that that it's a process of working with the same people over time, and then getting to understand it's a relational kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that's very important, Ken. And the other thing you said, which is important, is that you do get a sense of who kind of gets your writing. And it's not going to be everyone. It's highly, highly, highly subjective, which is also the case, you know, in terms of, you know, even agents, you know, with, you know, the folio guy had a folio, he's very opinionated and you know, but listen, I mean, there are lots of other agents who have different opinions. So, you know, and if you're writing, like I would say for Kira Ann, who's writing dystopian, you know, it would be really helpful to have a writing partner who reads and writes dystopian, because otherwise, you know, like you're going to be getting feedback from someone who just doesn't read or write it. You know, it's you know, it's a bit that adds an element of complexity. That being said, I know, at least speaking for myself, there's a lot of things that, one of the things I like about being in a workshop is I read things that I don't normally read at all. Like I think, Michael, yours is kind of dystopian, isn't it? Michael Hirsch?
Yes, it's extremely dystopian.
Okay, all right. That just tells you how much I know. I'm like, I think this is dystopian, but you know, if it's well written, I'll read anything. So, you know, that's and you know, and I would also say sometimes we can hide behind our genres. I'm not saying this is the case with you, Michael, but you know, I read things in workshop that are just so overwhelmingly confusing, and they have so many characters, and they're so in the weeds, and they're so technical, and you know, I mean, well, let me ask you this, Kira Ann, you do you read dystopian as well?
Yes.
So does it have to be comprehensible?
Well, it's interesting because dystopian within the broader context of like speculative fiction is interesting. Out of all the speculative fiction genres, dystopian tends to be either the most intentionally confusing or the most clearly understood. Because, for example, like 1984 or We or They, like those books are they feel very structured because you understand the stakes of how everything disintegrated. But there are other dystopian books that I would argue are a little bit more like speculative, where the structure or lack of structure in the novel is what heightens the dystopian elements of it. So like, that was kind of like a circular answer.
No, that actually was the best explanation I've ever heard. I was being a little bit selfish by asking you that, because I kind of really wanted to know. So no, thank you. Well, listen, guys, it's 6:30, and I don't think is there any questions that have not been addressed, or you know, I know this was not really like a panel of experts event. This really was a bunch of writers muddling along together kind of conversation. And I think, you know, it's hard with this many people, but I hope it was helpful, and certainly send feedback of if there are other topics you would like to see addressed, or if you would like to see a different format. You know, we welcome your feedback. But is there anything?
Tanya, I'm also wondering if anybody would be interested, or the people that are here, that maybe we revisit the same topic like every quarter.
Sure. I mean, we could certainly do that. You know, are you saying, Lisa, you want to? Sorry.
I was saying I would like that very much. I had a couple of points I want to make, but we could save it for the next time.
Well, no, Michael. I thought your hand was up the whole time. Is that the same with both Michaels, Michael Brown and Michael Hirsch? I thought your hand was up, and then I thought you just never, like someone who puts their blinker on and never takes it down. I'm sorry. So you know what, Michael, go ahead. Tell us, what were you thinking?
No, I just wanted to throw something out there to anyone who might want to comment on it. I mean, I'm really struggling. I've got an 85,000 word draft. But you know, when does the characterization slow down the plot, and when does too much plotting slow down the characterization? It's that balance that I'm trying to achieve. And I know it's a question of feel, and there are no formulas. I understand that. But anyone that might have any insights about that, and you know, doesn't have to be here. You email me separately or whatever. But that sort of is my central struggle right now, and I'm very interested in what anyone might have to think.
Anyone want to weigh in on that?
Is that 85,000 complete and just needs to be revised, or are you still writing it?
Yeah, no, it's probably going to end up being 90 to 100. You know, it's going to, the second half of it needs more work, and some of the characters need more development. But that, you know, I'm just really worried about the overall pacing. You want to create good character. That's because that's what people love and remember. But they also want plotting. They want things to move along. And where is the balance?
Yeah, I mean, I can answer the question from my own. I had a first novel that was read by agents and by editors, and it was kept by a publisher for like a year. And the feedback I got, because nobody took it, was that we love the story, but it isn't close enough to the character.
Yeah, yeah, and the thing is, you know, Michael, on that, I'm sorry, Lisa, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, no, the character drives it. That's what they want.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, this is really hard to answer in the abstract, because again, it totally depends on each individual novel. I'm going to be sending this out, but I think that's also why, for me, having some benchmarks of knowing, first of all, ask yourself, like, there shouldn't be character development just for the sake of character development. It should all be integral to what the stakes are for that character and each scene. Each scene has an arc. What does each character want in that scene? And if a character doesn't want anything in the scene, the character probably shouldn't be in the scene. So you have to be very, very strict with yourself. But beyond that, I don't think we can make too many rules without having read it in terms of the pacing. But I would say, take a look at the Michael Huig stage plot structure. Again, I'm going to send this all out to you, and look online, because you can actually plot, track your own book and say, at this stage of my novel, have I met these benchmarks? And if you haven't, it's probably lagging. And if you're just sort of meandering and, you're supposed to have, a change of plans or a point of no return in the middle, and you're still kind of developing, well, then that's dragging. So I think there actually are external ways to track yourself personally. And again, this is from someone who never did this before, but I'm doing it now. Margie, final word.
Yeah. An editor I worked with early on made me do the story arcs, the plot structures of 6 novels that I thought were close to, similar to what I was aiming for. And it was very painful, and I was very irritated by it. And it was very helpful. And
Margie, what a great final word, because that is a fantastic advice. And, I think what that points to is we all would kind of like someone to say, oh no, it's really, really lovely. But the fact is, it's hard work, and you got to really be tough on yourself. And have fun. So, well, listen, I hope that you enjoyed meeting each other and talking a little bit and hearing about some tips and tricks. And we will, again, compile everything on our chat, put it together with all the resources, and send that out to you. And do give me, I'll put my email. So I'm president of Columbia Fiction Foundry currently, and if you have other ideas and things you'd like to see addressed, send them to me, and we hope to see you again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Todd.
This was very enjoyable. Very nice to do this again.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you all.
Bye. And I hope to see some of you at our workshops. Okay. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.